Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one vendor or the solution. So far, we have reviewed only vendors. Now we are going to be focusing more on the products. We are going to take much deeper dive on the products. So we do that. We also review a bunch of stories from the week related to ERP or digital transformation. And, we are going to do all of that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my intro. If you don't know me, I am Sam Gupta. I am principal at Elevate IQ. I have been doing ERP and digital transformation for roughly 20 plus years. And today's topic is Microsoft GP. We have done a lot of engagements related to Microsoft GP, so it's near and dear to my heart. And then as part of Elevate IQ, we help our clients with the ERP selection, contract negotiation, enterprise architecture, system architecture, business process re-engineering, and the ERP implementation. On that note, I am going to move to Phil for his intro.
Hi, Sam. Hi, everybody. I'm Phil Kerper with Ringling Business Solutions here in Wisconsin, coming to you today. Nice to be here. Ringling Business Solutions helps executive leadership teams align their core business plans with digital transformation. I come to you with several decades of experience in the C-suite and a lot of ERP experience and some good familiarity with Microsoft GP. So looking forward to it, Sam.
Thank you so much, Phil, for the intro. Dave, can I move to you next for your intro?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Hey, everybody. My name is Dave Chrysler, and I own an operations consulting company working with leaders in the manufacturing, construction, and cannabis spaces to help them create the systems needed to grow their business. And I come to you today with more than 20 years in manufacturing operations, working on ERP implementations and systemization. So happy to be here, and thanks for having me, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Andy, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. My name is Andy Pratico. I am in the show on location in Las Vegas today, so that's very, very exciting. I've been involved in ERP software for manufacturers for about 40 years, and I help companies evaluate and understand the truth about systems before you buy. Thanks so much, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And before we start on today's story, and if you're in the audience, you are joining for the first time, make sure you guys are going to be commenting in the LinkedIn comments, wherever you are watching, or YouTube, if you're watching there. And our panelists are going to make sure that they get back to you with your questions. And if we cannot get back to you on your questions during the show, then we'll make sure that we will send your answers after the show. On that note, I am going to start with first story. And the first story is very exciting. And the reason why it is exciting is because it is coming from our friends at Sage. And this is related to the Sage Intacct platform, which we have reviewed. And this is one of the cloud native platform that we all know. They are positioned for slightly more non-ERP centric industries, and those are going to be the service industries, not really product industries, which are going to be manufacturing, distribution, retail. The product itself does far better in general in the service centric industries, and that is going to be your not-for-profit construction. That's going to be your SaaS companies. It's going to be healthcare, staffing companies. Those are the companies. They are the major chunk of customers for Sage Intacct. As we all know, we have seen this in the other shows as well, that Sage Intacct has been trying to get into more of the product-centric space. First, they tried to develop the construction capability. They didn't have as rich, as deep construction capability as their legacy solution, which is your Sage 300 CRE. but now they are trying to develop the construction functionality. It's not there, but I mean, it can work very well in the construction right now. Unless you require very sophisticated functionality, then Sage is probably going to push you to their slightly more on-prem solution. I don't think that is even cloud hosted. Probably it's going to be cloud hosted by the partners. But they have been trying to build the micro vertical functionality on top of Sage Intacct. And based on the Bright Pearls acquisition, we know that they are trying to get into the more of the DTC market, the omnichannel market, that is going to be slightly more e-commerce centric. And today they have announced that they are trying to get into manufacturing market. Now, this is very interesting. As we all know, manufacturing market in general is very crowded, and it's extremely competitive as well. There is no reason why Sage Intacct would actually try to come to manufacturing market when they can really fill the holes in their existing solution for the other micro verticals where there is not as much competition. For example, let's say if you look at the construction space, if you are going to find a true cloud native solution for the construction space, you might find, with the help of add-ons, but you don't really have the native capabilities provided as part of the solution itself. You have a lot of gaps in the government contracting space, which is primarily penetrated by companies like Deltek. You have Unanet, but there are a lot of gaps in that space as well. But again, manufacturing is the biggest market for ERP. That's why everybody's sort of trying to grab a piece of pie in the manufacturing market. So we are going to look at their capabilities, what they have done more from the manufacturing perspective. So here, one of the most interesting things about this release is that they have released this in the country called France, okay, which is very interesting. And I have no idea how they chose that country as the first pilot. By the way, in France, they don't seem to have the localization because they are relying on another add-on, which is called Sage FRP 1000 is what they are using. So they must not have as strong localization for the French market. That's why they probably need to use this add-on. So the first question is going to be, hey, when you don't have the localization, why not build the localization first in the core solution, then building something where you are probably not going to have a shot. But maybe in the French market, there are no cloud native solutions. For example, Acumatica is definitely not there. I can almost guarantee this. Okay, NetSuite, I don't know. So maybe that is the reason why they are trying to grab the patches where Acumatica or NetSuite is not there, which could be a great play in general. So here they are saying this offers new industry capabilities for French customers specializing in the discrete manufacturing vertical and looking to drive business transformation with modernized processes and anytime access to data on any device. Sage Intacct Manufacturing is a purpose-built cloud-native production and operations management solution. Okay, when I am reading this, I did not find much of the manufacturing play, to be honest. This almost looked as if it is a distribution-centric solution. Even distribution functionality is probably going to be weaker, but this is very similar to how your solutions such as SAP Business One or Microsoft Business Central or Microsoft GP, for that matter, which we are going to review today, are going to treat manufacturing. Okay, exactly. So here we are going to be reviewing the key features that they are trying to position, and they are claiming that I am purpose-built. But purpose-built has far deeper meaning overall. When you talk about the deep manufacturing operations functionality, there are a lot of different feature set that you need to know, and it could cost billions and billions of dollars to be able to build that functionality. So again, my question is going to be, why are you moving to manufacturing market, which is already crowded? But we'll see how Sage Intacct does in the manufacturing market.
Sam, over on your left, your 5 bullets, if you look at the second bullet, it says manufacturing, make, and assemble. So it automatically, it's I'm making an assumption, of course, but that automatically leads me to believe it's an MRP-centric system, basic material planning, but nothing sophisticated. And it's probably, hey, the Intacct customer base is huge. They're trying to maintain some of those customers and get new ones. Obviously, France might be a better, easier target for manufacturing than North America.
Yeah, even the MRP is going to be fairly weak the way, it is in some of the other systems.
But better than they had before, right?
Sorry, what's that?
Better than they had before.
Yes, you are right. But again, it's not going to be anything close to other manufacturing systems. And, this is not even going to be close to some of the richer distribution system. So when you say make and assemble, it's a very lean distribution functionality, but we don't have enough data to be able to comment how deep the manufacturing functionality is going to be. But this is probably going to be similar to, some of the distribution solutions that might do a little bit of manufacturing, and they are going to sell it as the manufacturing solution. But then you will require tons and tons of add-on on top of that, and tons of custom development.
There's lots of bolt-ons out there that'll link into Sage or other accounting systems, and they do have stronger functionality for manufacturers than the core system has. That's for sure. Like Sage 300, Sage 100, all of those systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Real quick add to that, Sam. I've got 2 examples in the past couple of years where the legacy system was Sage and they were running either Mass 90, Mass 100 versions, and they were manufacturing, but they were bought as distribution type of software, and they were cheap, they were inexpensive, and they were on-prem, and so they kind of grew into a partial manufacturing solution, but not a lot of depth. And, as far as exactly what you're saying, and in both those cases, those companies moved on to a much more appropriate ERP as their business grew.
It's probably kidding, right?
Yeah, that's what I would feel. They might have BOM, but, that is the only thing probably they are going to do the way, some of the other distribution-centric systems, for them, manufacturing is just create a BOM and that's it, manufacturing is done. Manufacturing is far deeper operationally, overall in terms of the process complexity. If you want to do it right, I mean, if you are doing it in a spreadsheet, then anything is going to work for you. Then you probably don't need an ERP system. But if you are doing and running the way manufacturing is supposed to be done efficiently, then you would probably require thicker functionality. Just to be aligned, guys, Sage Intacct is one of the prettiest cloud native system. From the product perspective, if you look at the product, it's prettier than
definitely pretty.
Yeah, the other cloud native solutions such as Acumatica and NetSuite. That's how beautiful, the design is just phenomenal the way it looks. But again, it has very deep financial functionality. We looked at the way they are developing the feature in the release notes last week, I guess, when we did this session, and they are trying to develop some of the financial functionality that I only saw in systems such as SAP. It's very rare to find those functionality in a mid-market system, but Sage is obviously trying to build a very thick financial functionality that you are not going to find in other system, because obviously this is promoted by accountants. Accountants just love Sage Intacct, because obviously they are not going to find a better system overall from the accounting perspective that is going to be cloud native.
No question. And you know what? That just segues into your evaluation today, because you're right. Sage Intacct today is like widespread with the accountants, but in previous decades, it was ACPAC, which is now Sage 300, and Great Plains.
Exactly. You are right. You are absolutely right. For the most part, the Sage, most of their products, for the most part, they are promoted by accountants and accounting firms. I would say, Sage 500 was decent manufacturing system. Now
it was okay.
Yeah. And then, Sage X3 is great at process manufacturing.
It is great for process. It's a perfect product for process.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. So we are going to move on to the other bullet points here. So here, Sage Intacct is saying that
Sam, oops, I'm sorry, you're not off the slide yet. I'll wait.
Phil, go on if you have a comment.
No, it was more on scope. We have a question in the chat on the scope for tonight's show, but you should finish Sage first.
Okay, all right. So here, obviously they are trying to claim, Sage is saying that they are trying to build the industry-specific features that we have seen in case of their Bright Pearl acquisition that we are seeing in this particular case when they are trying to develop the manufacturing functionality. Here, again, they are saying automated system updates, keeping customer compliant with local regulations. That's the best of breed capability that they are trying to position as the manufacturing solution. But obviously, Sage FRP 100 is probably not part of the Sage Intacct portfolio. Maybe, I don't know if it is an add-on or it's going to be a separate, product. but that's definitely not part of Sage Intacct. Otherwise, they would not name it separately here. So here they are saying optional integration with the locally proven finance solution, which is Sage FRP 1000, to ensure compliance across key finance and accounting processes. So obviously they don't have that localization in that country, which is key for that country. France, if my understanding is right, I think France has very deep localization needs the way the taxation is structured in that country. So you would probably require a specialized solution. And that could be the reason why they are trying to target that country, because nobody else is there. So here, now they are saying within our portfolio to the more complex capabilities offered by Sage X3, Sage Intacct Manufacturing provides small manufacturing businesses with the opportunity to use best-in-class technology at a scale that suits them. So obviously they are trying to do similar to what NetSuite does. You go to NetSuite, you start on NetSuite, and then I'm going to sell you Oracle ERP Cloud. This is probably the similar strategy, but again, you need to find your market, because everybody needs to have that best of breed functionality, not best of breed, sorry, industry specific functionality. In 2022, that's how most ERP players are able to win. If you don't have, the deeper functionality in a specific industry, the solution is actually going to struggle. So right now, the way Sage Intacct is going, they are going all over the place, in my opinion. They should be developing far deeper functionality for certain industries, and they should be positioning in those industries as opposed to going everywhere. Here they are saying Sage Intacct Manufacturing is available to customers in France, either on a standalone basis or integrated with the financial management capabilities of, again, Sage FRP 1000, and is offered by Sage's experienced value-added reseller network of partners, which is the go-to-market model for Sage in general. They have a very strong channel. Okay, so that's it on this slide. So Phil, do you want to continue with your comment?
Yeah, we have a question of whether we're going to cover Microsoft AX included in this session or in a future session, Sam.
So this is going to be a very focused session only on Microsoft Dynamics GP. We have a future session coming that is going to be on the Microsoft AX product, which is your Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations in the cloud world. So we are going to be covering that product. But today we are only going to be focusing on Microsoft Dynamics GP.
Perfect. There's your answer, Nikki. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, anything else, guys, before I start the briefing session on Microsoft Dynamics GP? Okay, so Microsoft Dynamics GP, guys, obviously it's one of the most adopted solution in the market. Okay, it has roughly 40,000. Andy, correct me. You have been in the market for far longer than I have been.
You're right around the correct number.
Yeah, so they have roughly 40,000 installations. For an ERP, 40,000 installations is a lot. Okay, even SAP does not have that. SAP may have for larger customers, but typically getting that number itself is a big deal. The cloud native solutions, none of them are close to a point of 40,000. NetSuite is probably going to be closer, but I don't think they have as many installations. So kudos to Microsoft. They acquired this solution somewhere in 2000, and they have done a wonderful job in maintaining or retaining those customers on Microsoft Dynamics GP. Microsoft Dynamics GP, when it was acquired, it was a classic accounting solution, the way the accounting solution or the single tenant solutions are built, and I call them slightly more desktop app. When Microsoft Dynamics GP was acquired, it was almost like desktop app for accountants. It did a lot of things really, really well. It was an easy solution, for accountants, obviously much richer than systems such as QuickBooks. That's why they moved to Microsoft Dynamics GP, because, it provided a lot of bells and whistles that they would not get in the simpler accounting systems such as QuickBooks. Now, Microsoft Dynamics GP is not positioned for the cloud world. Okay, Microsoft is continuing with two products in their portfolio, and that is going to be Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations, which competes with SAP S/4HANA, Oracle Cloud ERP. That's their, granddaddy of the ERP in the portfolio. And then we have the Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, which is the older NAV solution. It was slightly more mid-market solution, the way it is positioned in the market, it is trying to compete with NetSuite, Acumatica, and they don't want to have third solution the way some of the companies have tried having 3 different solutions. But that strategy typically fires back because customers get confused when they are going to look at 2 or 3 different solutions. For example, SAP has SAP Business One, SAP Business by Design, and then SAP S/4HANA. Now, if you ask anybody, okay, what is SAP Business by Design? Nobody knows. Okay, and the reason why they don't know is because it comes across as very overlapping. If you already have SAP Business One, why do you need SAP Business by Design? From the product design perspective, it's a very different product. SAP Business One is a very different product than your SAP Business by Design. But for ERP companies, for some reason, it's very, very, very hard for them to sell the product design. I don't know why they find it hard. And in most cases, it is because of the salespeople, because they are overcommitting for everything. Okay, they should be setting the clear boundaries where SAP Business One is a fit and where SAP Business by Design is a fit. But typically, if you are going to have 2 different sales teams that are trying to position both,
they don't know the difference is what the problem, Sam.
Number 1, they don't know the difference. Number 2, they don't want to tell the difference.
And they don't want they're instructed to not tell the difference.
Right. I mean, maybe from the corporate perspective, they are trying to mention that, play nice. But that's not how salespeople work.
It's almost propaganda.
Salespeople are going to look at, okay, what do I have in my portfolio, and can I sell this to the customer or not? That's what they care for. They don't care for anything else. That's how salespeople work in general, right? There is always going to be a thin line, the gray line between how these ERP systems are positioned, which system can work for which business, and that's why they are able to sort of get these deals in the CRM and get these deals approved. None of the companies I know of, they don't want to oversell, to be honest. Okay. None of the OEMs, but typically executing that at the sales level is very, very hard when you are going to be companies as big as Microsoft or SAP. Now, in case of Microsoft, that's probably the reason why Microsoft is not continuing with 3 different products. For example, Oracle is continuing only with 2 products, right? Sage has only 2 products right now. Okay. Infor is all over the place, as we all know.
How many do you think you'll end up there, Sam?
What's that?
How many do you think you'll end up at Infor?
Right now, they are a very different company. So I think they are doing 4 or 5. They are doing 4, right? 4 or 5.
Go future. Go forward. Yeah.
Yeah. 4 or 5 is what they have sort of officially communicated. I mean, Infor is never going to communicate the way other companies, they are never going to be as expressive. Obviously, they have like 200 ERPs in their portfolio. So the impact is not going to be as massive as Microsoft Dynamics GP, because if you look at the community of Microsoft GP, it has I don't know how many people are there. So if Microsoft is going to announce something, it's going to be all over the place. That's how big but Infor, the systems that they acquired, the community itself is very small. It's not as passionate as Microsoft Dynamics GP. It's not as big. So again, overall, from the corporate strategy perspective, what I like to see is, have 2, 3, 4 products. Don't have 200. 2, 3, 4 is okay. I mean, you need to have the purpose-built product for specific industries because you definitely require that functionality. So here, in case of Microsoft Dynamics GP, the way the product was designed, it was very comparable to I would say, the right comparison for Microsoft Dynamics GP is probably going to be SysPro. Okay. Then you are going to have systems such as Macola. That is probably going to be right comparison.
Macola would be a good one. Yes.
Yeah. I would say SAP Business One is probably the right comparison as well.
It by itself, without any of the ISVs, yes.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole idea, the reason why I am trying to compare it with these solutions is because they are going to be single tenant. They are not really designed to be multi-tenant. It's designed for smaller companies. It's not going to have as deep, manufacturing functionality. They were traditionally far stronger accounting systems, and then you sort of try to develop the ERP functionality on top of that. So you don't really have the deep supply chain expertise that your NEV is going to have. So NEV always had, let's say if you're a distribution company, Microsoft GP struggles with it. Okay. So if you are going to have all of those DC network, even if you are, let's say, just one entity, you have, let's say, 10 stores in the US, Microsoft Dynamics GP is going to struggle because you will be struggling with those transfer process when you are going to transfer the goods from one store to the next. Microsoft GP was not designed for that. So we are going to review all of that in terms of, what Microsoft Dynamics was. But the reason why I am trying to compare it with these solutions is because the way it had started from the database perspective, it had very file system centric database. Okay, it was on C3, I guess, if I remember, and I don't have as much familiarity with C3, how the database was structured, but it does seem like it probably had similar journey as SysPro. And the reason why I am trying to compare it with SysPro, because SysPro ended up moving to SQL Server because now they are trying to go after much larger client, and you need that data integrity for your ERP system, and that's why you would move to SQL Server. In fact, in case of GP, after Microsoft acquired them, they are the ones who actually built a little bit of ERP functionality on top of Microsoft GP. Okay, whatever it has right now, it is actually done by Microsoft. Before that, it was primarily an accounting solution. It was not used by companies such as manufacturing, distribution, retail. It was primarily used by other companies such as your healthcare, and it's still very much used by those non-traditional ERP companies, what I like to call. What else do we cover as part of briefing that I have not covered so far? Dave, Phil, Andy, did I miss anything?
I think you did a nice job walking through everything, Sam. So excited to get into this one. I think it's going to be a good one and popular for a lot of people out there.
It's got an incredible following. It's been around for a long time. Accountants always loved it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting on some other slides that are coming up here too. What I found with GP is if you needed somewhat advanced warehouse management, it pushed you into F&O. If you wanted to stay a Microsoft product.
That's a massive leap. That's a massive
leap.
So, but that goes to you that there's nothing in between, right? So you got one, if you're a distributor with multiple DCs and somewhat of a complex restocking type of model, it's hard to get that out of GP.
Would be able to accommodate, Phil.
Exactly.
There is an in between for what you're describing. That's a whole different topic, though. We're talking about GP today.
Yeah, but I mean, Andy's right. NAV is the right next logical step. F&O, it's like, you were writing.
You still have to get a third-party ISV for the warehouse management, Phil. But it would work.
Yeah. Well, like you say, I'm off topic a little bit. That's where I was going to go next with that, Andy.
Well, my brother works for a very large warehousing, just $3 billion distribution, and they use NAV.
All right, guys, so we are going to talk about the history. So as I had pointed out, during the briefing session that, it was developed by a small company back in 1993. Microsoft acquired them in roughly 2000. The acquisition was completed in 2001. The language that Dynamics GP uses, it's called Dexterity. And Dexterity is still used by Microsoft GP. If you actually go to forums in Microsoft GP, there's also conversation happening around that. So you might find a lot of programmers who might know what that language is. But obviously, all of these legacy solutions, they find it hard to migrate that to slightly more modern languages that you are going to easily find the developers. So in this particular case, I have had clients where they might be on AS400 and there is no logical reason why they are on AS400. And sometimes they need to pay $300 an hour, $400 an hour to pay to those COBOL developers, because right now you are not going to find very many people who really understand, how AS400 system works. So they can charge whatever they want. And that is the challenge that you are going to get. Let's say you are on GP, you are going to pay 2x on very, very, very old system. It's like you are trying to maintain a car that nobody wants in the world. You are the only one who's riding it. So, so you have to pay the price. And, there is no logical reason why you should be on this system as such, unless you are super frightened that move is probably going to be very disruptive for your business. So in general, you should be paying attention to the programming languages, which language the system is using, and if there are any other developers in the market or systems in the market that might be using these programming languages. That should be a factor when you are trying to evaluate the ERP system. Now, when they acquired, they were, as it's very clearly pointed out here, that they were on C3. Microsoft actually migrated them to Microsoft SQL Server databases. If you're on Microsoft SQL Server, there are a lot of different systems that are running in the market, so you have nothing to worry about as long as you are getting Microsoft SQL Server. It's not going to be as capable as SAP HANA, but still, it's Microsoft SQL Server that is still running the mission critical load. And 90% of the systems are probably, ERP systems are probably running on Microsoft SQL Server, as far as I know.
It says pervasive. Are they currently deployed on pervasive as well? Pervasive SQL?
Not.
Which is the new version of Btrieve?
It says previous versions were compatible. So I don't know if they.
Okay, so it's probably an older version, or probably clean SQL now, Microsoft SQL. Okay.
Yes. I don't know if
I
Microsoft.
noticed the previous versions, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And Business Central uses a very new language called AL language. It's very new. It's very modern. It's different. But at least that uses the modern framework. You are going to have the modern development tools. You are going to have development community that is going to be super passionate about this programming language, compared to your dexterity. Now, there have been a lot of conversations about the life cycle and when Microsoft is going to pull the plug. They have been very clear when they announced, I believe, in 2018, that they wanted to go really hard on cloud market. They changed their channel. They changed their comp strategy, the way they wanted to really approach the market. And at that time, they announced that, this is how your distribution model is going to look for cloud. They had very price, list approach for distributing the price. Microsoft is probably the only company that I know of who has the real consumption-based model. Okay, there are a lot of companies that talk about consumption-based model, but here, in case of Microsoft, you can literally buy 3 licenses as of today, and tomorrow, let's say if you need 2, you can take off that seat. Okay, that's what is the real meaning of consumption. Consumption does not mean that even if you are going to be on the transaction-based system, that could be consumption-based, but you are still signing the contract for 3 years with the company, so you are locked when you are going to be signing the contract with that company. But in the case of Microsoft, they are the only ones who are probably doing the prorated. In other cases, you might be able to negotiate it out when you are going to be working with the vendor. There might be a possibility, but they don't have crystal clear rules, when they are going to be signing up the contract, that, okay, you can take out the license at any point of time, and this is going to be used whatever you like. We are not going to charge you when your seats are going to be unused, which is a far fairer model than a lot of companies who are trying to market very aggressively that they are only consumption-based. Now, anybody had any comment? Okay, so they have made a lot of announcements in the past about Dynamics GP going end of life. This is what a lot of OEMs do. They are going to announce and they are going to sense how the community is going to react. Okay, and if you have community as large as GP, the backlash is going to be slightly frightening, because obviously what Microsoft does not want, they don't want to lose all of those 40,000 customers, and they cannot afford to lose them for, let's say, for SAP or Oracle. So obviously they need to be slightly more gentle. So they are trying to extend the timeline and slowly and gradually moving those customers to other cloud native systems. That is going to be either Business Central. They are going to be incentivizing the customers to move to Business Central. The pricing is going to be friendly. They might give you a lot of discount if you actually moved to cloud. But if you are still going to remain on GP, there is going to be a time when they are going to pull the plug. And sometimes they might not even announce that because of the past backlash that they have already faced. So you are already in the waiting game when they are going to pull the plug. So I don't know why you would wait or why you would buy the GP license. It just would not make any sense in 2022, because they don't have a clear cloud strategy for GP, even though you might see during the demo that it looks like cloud when you are going to look at GP, but it is only going to be lifted and shifted. and we are going to be talking about the difference. It's not really as cloud native as your business central system, which is re-architected, rewritten, reprogrammed as the cloud native system. Your GP is not going to be that. GP is delivered over web. Okay, you will not be able to spot the difference if you don't have the programming background. But if somebody knows anything about cloud native, they can spot by looking at the screen and by comparing these screens. So in case of GP, obviously it's not re-architected, redesigned. It's very on-prem. Typically, it is going to be hosted by partners, but now I guess Microsoft is doing that as well. But again, I don't think they are ever going to re-architect this system because, from the strategy perspective, it would not make a ton of sense. And so far, they have not announced that. So again, if you are buying a new system, I just don't see a reason why you would go for GP. And if you're waiting on GP, what are you waiting for? You should probably move out of GP right now. Okay. Any comments? I can take those.
I was just going to ask Sam, have they not pushed that date back a couple times already since they've been talking about it? I saw that now it's 28, but I've seen a couple different reports that they just keep on hedging that number.
And they'll keep pushing until there is, so they are going to be looking at, okay, how many customers do I have today? So maybe today I have 40,000. I was able to incentivize, let's say, 10,000 to move to, either NAV or some other system. So now I have, maybe as of today, I have 20,000 or 10,000 or 500. Obviously, if I have 500, how much backlash am I going to get? So I'm just simply going to pull the plug. Okay, go figure it out. I don't care now because now I have 500 customers. So that's how companies think, irrespective of whether they are going to announce or whether they are delaying. The only reason why they are delaying right now is because the customers are not willing to move from GP at this point of time. They are still on GP. There is a substantial majority of the customer that is still sitting on GP. So they have no choice but to extend, because obviously their goal is not to lose those customers. Their goal is to educate them. But, if somebody is simply not willing to move, then what can they do? They cannot.
I think it strengthens your point that they've been moving the date, that all of a sudden, the future comes slowly, then all of a sudden. So, the next thing, like you say, at some point, they're going to say, we told you.
Exactly. I mean, that's how companies operate, right? So either you, and by the way, I mean, this is, everybody sort of hated SAP when SAP announced 2025 deadline. Okay, literally everybody, you cannot do that. SAP is just too powerful. SAP is not supposed to do that. But SAP is the only company that was really expressive. And that's how companies should operate. But if customers are not really willing to listen to them, what can companies do? They'll kill silently. So it's really up to you, which side or whether you want to listen to the truth or not. You want to hear the truth or not. So in my case, I would rather be very upfront with the company. Hey, tell me the date, okay, so that I can plan accordingly. Otherwise, I don't know why you would want to live in the dark. Any other comments, guys? Okay, so here they have already pushed until 2028. That is very clear, and they are still releasing the support and the taxes and the regulatory packages. On the recent release, the recent release was announced in November 2021, which is the 2018 R2 release, and they are still doing all of the bug fixes. They are doing a little bit of functionality release as well, but it's nothing major as such. They are simply watching, okay, what are customers complaining? If they are really sort of stuck in using the product, obviously they are going to work on those. But as such, the development is not going to be as aggressive as you are going to find in some of the other systems. That is going to be your Microsoft Dynamics NAV. If you want to stay in Microsoft ecosystem, or you can move to somewhere else. The products that have clear direction from the OEM, that they are trying to continue on those products. Here they are saying if your Dynamics GP solution is governed by model lifecycle, again, as Microsoft has very clear guidelines, the way they release the product. Some companies don't do that, as they are not as expressive as Microsoft. Microsoft has very clear guideline, in terms of the releases, in terms of the announcement for the product support, and they have a date that they are trying to announce. In that way, Microsoft is a very fair company in general from the product perspective. This is what I like to see in the product releases. But not every company does this, especially if they are not going to be as big as Microsoft. Now, when you look at these screens, so this is the screenshot that we have taken from one of the YouTube video. And here, if you actually look at this, one of the perception that you are going to get is, okay, I have my financial, sales, purchasing, administration, I have inventory, HR, payroll, manufacturing, project, field service. Awesome. This is the ERP that I want to get because I have everything. Now the problem is in details, okay? And sometimes it's confusing for me as well, to be honest. Okay, so again, tell me how GP is different from F&O and why am I paying more for F&O? When you look at the functionality, the way information architecture is of the product, the way screens are structured, the way data is structured, okay? That's where the real differentiation is from the product design perspective, from the product architecture perspective. A product is designed to handle a specific transaction workload. That's how IT products work. Okay, you are not supposed to be putting, let's say, 8 people in a very small car. It's not designed to handle that. You might be able to pull it off a couple of times, but that's not fair to the car, I guess. That's how ERP systems work. So in case of GP, obviously it's a very small solution. Now, overall, from the feature perspective, if you are taking the checklist approach for your ERP selection, GP might be able to match pretty much everything.
It'll check all the boxes.
So if you are taking the traditional approach for selection, you are probably going to be confused. Okay, again, why is GP different and how is GP different from your F&O? It could be very confusing overall when you are simply comparing the functionality. The real differentiation is in the product design, the information model. That's where the real differentiation is. Okay, it is not really in the functions and features unless you are trying to visualize the workflow, how a specific feature is going to be implemented for your company and whether the solution can do that or not. And that requires far deeper analysis than simply checking the boxes on a spreadsheet. So here, obviously, you are going to find tons and tons and tons of options in GP overall from the reporting perspective. But that's how, at least if you look at the mainstream vendors, for example, SAP, if you look at, Sage, they are all going to have very deep reporting capabilities on top of your accounting. They are going to have very deep accounting capabilities. They are probably going to have very deep procurement capabilities. Okay, but they struggle for the other operational capabilities. And that's where, let's say, if you are in the manufacturing distribution, you need far deeper supply chain manufacturing capabilities if you're trying to buy for that. Now, let's look at some of the, these screens. And here, if you actually look at the screen, again, it's very, very, very hard to find the difference. Okay, how is GP different from your NetSuite and Acumatica? Because you can see all of that here, right? If you're going to be comparing NetSuite, let's say with the GP screen, it's very, very, very hard to spot the difference because you are going to have the similar number of fields that you are probably going to find in NetSuite. But if you actually pay attention to detail, okay, so here, number one thing that I would like to highlight here is this is a very well-designed system. The way information is architected in this specific system, the reason for that is because, number one, Microsoft acquired them. So obviously, they must be very credible developers. Here, Microsoft is maintaining that, and Microsoft is no doubt very good at development. So, you are buying a really good product. Now, if you are going to buy this product from a mom and pop shop that is doing the development, typically the information architecture is going to look all over the place. So here, I will tell you a couple of things that you need to pay attention to here. For example, let's say if you look at the ship tools, the build tools, so this is the 1-to-N scenario where you are probably going to have multiple ship tools and build tools. And this is where the differentiation is. When you look at the baby ERP versus the bigger ERP, 1-to-N scenario is where the differentiation is going to be. For example, let's say if you compare GP with your NAV or F&O, one of the areas that they are going to struggle is going to be, and I don't know if this is going to be true in case of GP or NAV or not, but when you grow and you are a much larger company, then what you cannot do is you cannot have that 1-to-1-to-1 approach, meaning you are going to close the order, then you are going to cut the shipment, then you are going to close the invoice. Typically, these smaller companies are okay with that. But once you grow at a point, then you need to decouple this process. You need to analyze each of the processes in separation, and you need to have the process model for each of the process steps. And that's where the bigger systems really shine. Okay. Some systems are going to be really, really good at one-to-one process. Some systems are not going to be as good. And typically those are very small systems because they are designed for very small operation. They are going to say, hey, in Acumatica, I can close the sales order in one click. Because the only thing they are trying to show is they are trying to show one-to-one scenario. In most cases, that's not the case. If you are looking at bigger companies, once you scale, you need to decouple each of these steps. You need to analyze them in isolation, and you need to figure out, okay, what is the best way of optimizing this process step? What can I do to make sure this process is going to be efficient? And if you are going to be using a smaller system, obviously they are going to struggle with those one-to-one scenarios. The other challenges that you're going to see, one of the most highlighted challenge that you will hear in the GP versus NAV community or the conversation, the way their chart of accounts are structured, they are not as scalable as some of the larger systems. The other differentiation that you are going to find in GP versus NAV is going to be NAV is a very localized and globalized system that I always talk about. And the difference between a localized and globalized system is going to be the way your reporting is done. Okay. Typically, when you are going to be doing the reporting and when you are trying to support multiple countries, most likely you need to keep your books in multiple currencies. You need to compare the transactions in multiple currency. Your reporting currency is going to be different. Now, in the smaller system, you are probably not going to find all of those features. Okay, so that's where the differentiation is when we look at the smaller versus the larger system. But overall, if you compare the customer screen, you have roughly 4 tabs here. It has all of the information that you probably would need, for your business to cut your invoices or sales orders or the purchase order. So sometimes it could be very confusing overall, why you need more than GP. But again, if you really analyze your process and you try to sort of design it the way bigger systems can handle, then you can gain real efficiencies in your process. But that requires far deeper analysis of your process first and then the implementation in the system. Okay, I can take any comments, guys. Otherwise, I can move to the next one.
That previous screen, one of the fields was fax. Is that still a common tool used?
Andy, minor point, to be honest. I mean, you can have that, but this is an old system.
Sure.
They probably are carrying, no big deal.
I know. I was just curious. Maybe there's, I think there still are some companies that use fax.
There are. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, guys? Okay. Here, let's look at the item screen. And item screen is typically, the rocket science is, honestly speaking, when you talk about the real manufacturing. Okay. Item is where the way your SKUs are going to be designed, that is going to drive your planning. That is going to drive your MRP process. That is going to drive your SNOP process. That is going to drive your entire supply chain. And typically, the first person the problem is going to notice is going to be the buyers. Okay, they are the first ones in the company. The rest of the people, accounting, typically fine, no problem whatsoever. Sales, they are okay. They can figure out things on the spreadsheet. But the real pain, if somebody has in the company, that is always going to be that supply chain person or the planner, because they need to look at everything. And one of the things, if your inventory is going to be off, is going to be your due dates are going to be off. Okay, and then they have to do a lot of computation on the spreadsheet to figure out, okay, they need to order this on time, so they will be living on the spreadsheet. And if you have too many buyers, obviously they all are going to have their own processes, and then inventory and the BOMs are not going to be aligned. Sometimes that is because of the underlying limitations of the system. The other times it could be because of the way it is implemented. So here, if you look at the item screen, again, our analysis right now is that GP is more of the accounting system. It has a little bit of distribution functionality. It's not as strong in distribution, and that's what you are going to see on the item screen. So here, one of the things that you would notice, if you look at other systems such as manufacturing systems, you will not find these things such as sales inventory. Okay, that's a very specific term for the distribution system, because then you are going to have the sales, the purchasing, inventory, the manufacturing systems are typically, they are not going, at least I have not seen, because in general, manufacturing systems are slightly more operation centric. They are not as sales centric. So that's the real differentiator overall in a distribution system versus the manufacturing system. Here, they also have the valuation method. It's a very deep accounting system. So obviously, even though the size of GP system is very small, but here they have very deep valuation methods that you would find, in a very strong accounting system. But, again, your operational functionality is going to be missing. But overall, from the accounting perspective, you are going to be covered. The other, again, here, if you look at some of these screens, the only thing you really have is the options, accounts, and suggest items. You don't really have the thick functionality that you would expect in much larger system when you are running very deep supply chain, very deep operations, very deep manufacturing. That is something I could not see, at least in case of GP. Here, now, again, if you look at these functions, sometimes that could feel overwhelming, that it has too much. I probably don't need all of this. Okay, and that's the beauty of ERP systems, because most of the demos, when you are going to look at the demos, even of these smaller systems, sometimes it's going to come across as very, very alarming, because you are going to see a lot of different features, and these are typically reports. So these systems are going to support a lot of reports, but they are not going to have the real bells and whistles that you are going to need for your supply chain operations, as well as for your planning. Here, for example, let's say if you look at item kits, bill of materials. Now, the bill of materials functionality is going to be very light in general. Each of the distribution system, they are going to have bill of material. Every system has bill of material, but again, they cannot really do the kind of manufacturing system is going to require the bill of material. So here, let's say if you're light manufacturing, you are a distribution company, you are probably going to be okay. But if you are really strong in operation and the manufacturing, then probably it will not work. Here, the other thing to note is the item resource planning and the site resource planning. Again, these are very distribution-centric terms. Okay, so typically in the manufacturing world, you have the material resource planning and you have the distribution resource planning. So a lot of distribution systems use distribution terms. Okay, they are going to call it as DRP. But now, if you look at the item resource planning and the site resource planning, the way it is worded, it comes across as if this is for the distribution system. So these are the things that you should be paying attention to when you are evaluating the ERP system, to understand the difference, whether it is designed to be more of the distribution system or is it really a manufacturing system. So this is where the real differentiation is, of these things. Obviously, you have landed cost group. That is probably going to be, that is slightly more advanced functionality for a system like GP. So if GP is supporting that, kudos to them. They also have some more advanced features, such as your lots and serial number. And most of the companies, even the smaller ones, they are probably going to require that. So even the smaller systems are probably going to support all of that, and that is probably going to be part of the checklist. So each of the systems need to have that. Okay, so here is the newer screen that is coming from Microsoft itself. So obviously now, if you actually pay attention to the screen, the best way to find out whether it is the cloud native system or whether it is the on-prem system would be pay attention to the way the icons are structured. If icons actually feel like they are slightly more IE5, IE6, IE7, then you are probably looking at lifted and shifted, system. So here, as you can see, home, financial, so as you can see the layout, it's very Outlook centric, the older Outlook. So obviously it is rendered in the web. You have a bunch of nice looking tables because they have changed the colors, but changing the colors does not change the underlying code. So, colors are great. I mean, the appearance is going to look as if it is modern, but it is designed to deceive you as the customer. Okay,
what does
so
shift and lift mean, Sam?
So lift and shift is going to be when you are not going to be designing the system from the ground up as the cloud native. You are simply putting the code base that you have, and you are simply porting over web, meaning, it's just going to be a fancy screen that you have, and it's going to work in web. So from your perspective, you're going to feel anything that is on web is probably going to be cloud, and I am getting the subscription pricing. So from your perspective, there is no difference. But as such, the underlying code makes all the difference in a cloud native system versus a system that is going to be lifted and shifted. Okay. Now, the degree of lifted and shifted is going to be questionable as well. Some systems were designed from scratch. They are cloud native. Some systems are sort of in between. Most of them. Okay. But some systems are never going to get any cloud native functionality because they are not part of the strategic priority for the OEM. In case of GP, they are trying to please the customer because they are asking for it. They have the web version, but this system is never going to be architected as far as my understanding goes of Microsoft strategy. Maybe they are going to change that, but I don't think they are ever going to redesign, re-architect, make it cloud native the way other systems are going to be, such as your Microsoft Business Central or anything else. For example, SAP Business by Design, NetSuite, Acumatica. Obviously, they are all they have been re-architected as the cloud native systems.
Hey Sam, I've got a question for you. When you have a system that is, back to your point of the lifted into the cloud, does that make the transaction side more process heavy, or is there any impact on the processing power because of that particular development versus cloud native? I understand the UI portion. I'm curious on the processing power and if there's any, issues from a transaction standpoint.
You might not feel the difference, to be honest, typically that is going to be dependent upon how heavy the database is in the background.
Okay.
Typically, processing is going to be based on the capacity of the database. And that's the reason why SAP has HANA appliance, because they are running one of the strongest workloads. So database matters a lot overall in terms of the thickness of the transactions. What kind of transactions can you process in the system? So the smaller systems, as we all know, when we looked at some of the smaller systems, they try to take the shortcut. They are going to flatten the information model. And the only reason why they are flattening the information model is because your database cannot process that long-standing transaction. It's going to break in between. You are going to get a lot of errors. So they are trying to shorten that by many different means. But overall, typically database is where you are going to see the real performance improvement. You will see minor issues overall, but when you are going to use it, because your business systems are designed for that business user, and even if there is going to be a slight difference in the performance of the system, they are not going to be motivated to use it. We all know, let's say if my internet breaks 2 times in a day, I'm not going to be motivated to work, to be honest. So systems typically have very psychological impact on your on your mind. So when you look at the efficiency and productivity, it goes far deeper than simply looking at the system performance. But I'm not too sure if there is going to be a sort of the transactional difference. Maybe not. I'm not too sure. But you are going to find the differences when you are going to use the system, because the technology is not designed for that form factor. The form factor is different.
I think that's a great point. I mean, everybody probably has seen situations like that unfold where, one part of the process is not working or a system doesn't function as a user intends. And so they ultimately find a workaround in that. And, that's how we get, process migration. So thanks for answering that though.
Of course. Anything else, guys? Okay. So I'm actually going to move to the next one. And here, if you actually pay attention to this screen, so here, as you can see, it is ported on the web. We can very clearly see, again, if you are going to compare this with Acumatica, you are going to feel, okay, this is pretty. It's very similar to Acumatica. Okay, so how is it different again? You are saying it is not cloud, but for me, as the buyer, it looks same. So here, I am going to have these tiles. This is how your NetSuite, Acumatica, the cloud native, the Sage Intacct are probably going to appear. You have really, really pretty color, really bright. So obviously, you are going to feel that this is probably new. But as such, the underlying code, you will not know unless you have the programming background in the cloud native systems. It's very, very, very hard to spot that difference. In fact, the menu, if you actually look on the left side, it looks very fancy. Even for me, it's going to be really hard unless I do my research. But this is how pretty a lifted and shifted system could be. Okay, so this is what you are going to see in the demo, and you are going to be blown away. Okay, a system cannot be prettier than this. I can guarantee this. Okay.
Where have I heard that before, Sam?
I know. So here, this is the Power BI interface. Okay, sitting on top of your GP, and this is the first screen that you are going to see in your demos. Okay, and obviously Power BI is cloud native platform. You can see the difference between the previous screen and this screen. There is a difference because this is the cloud native system. The fonts are going to be very different. The way these screens are rendering is going to be very different because it's a cloud native system. It's designed to be cloud native. It's programmed to be cloud native. That's why it is looking so pretty and so organized and so I don't know how to describe this, but I can spot it. I don't know about
it's clean.
Yeah. So this is what you are going to see, and this is what most vendors are doing in the market at this point of time. They have some sort of Power BI that is sitting on top of your core application. And in the demo, you are probably going to see this. Half of the demo time is going to be spent on these screens, and then finally you see the real ERP screens. And they are going to say, okay, these are not as pretty. That's okay, but you are probably going to be working on the dashboards, but that's not true at all.
Is Power BI included with GP, or is it separate?
So typically Power BI, as far as my understanding of Microsoft ecosystem goes, they like to throw Power BI as part of your SQL Server license. So Power BI is going to be free, and SQL, by the way, the other difference you are going to see is going to be in the contract. Contract is where the truth lies when you are going to detect whether it is going to be, cloud native on-prem. So in the contract, in case of Microsoft GP, you are going to be paying separate license fee for SQL Server. I don't know if they have a subscription model at this point of time, but traditionally GP required you to pay for SQL Server license. Now, if you go to SAP Business One, SAP required you to pay for SQL Server license when they were trying to sell the on-prem license, because now you are actually buying from another vendor. In case of SAP, it's very crystal clear. They cannot bundle as part of the same license because you are buying from Microsoft. In case of Microsoft, they can technically do this because you are buying from the same vendor. So it gets very hard, but in contract, you can find the differences. So when you require the SQL Server license, what that means is that's probably on-prem. It's not really cloud native. Otherwise, you will never have to buy SQL Server license in the cloud native world. Okay. So now we are going to look at some of the reviews to vet what we have, noticed so far. And reviews is where you are going to find the real truth. If you actually pay attention, again, you need to pay attention to details. You need to look at the size of the company, date, who is reviewing, what is the credential of the buyer who is reviewing, and what kind of details are they providing. Don't worry about the ratings. They don't mean anything. Okay. Look at the details of the reviews. And that's where the truth is. So here,
and the year of the review too.
Yeah. So here, this is from a very trusted site. It's called, I think it's called Trust Radius. And that is the only one which I trust because they do verify the reviews. At least they claim. And from my experience, the reviews that I have seen from them, they seem slightly better than the other sites in general. And that's why
I trust in your name, Sam.
I know. Okay, so here we are looking at this one. Sorry, Andy. So here the company that we are looking at is going to be the hospital and healthcare, and that is the 11 to 50 employees. And this I call as the non-ERP industry because they don't require as deep operational functionality because their operational needs are going to be so off that they are probably going to require another system anyways, and they are not going to find the one ERP that can do it all for them. It's very rare, to find that. So here, this is the hospital and healthcare space. They are looking at 11 to 50 employees. She's saying small business friendly. So now let's look at how she is using the system. So here she is saying, we use Dynamics GP in our accounting finance department. Pay attention to that. Only accounting and finance, okay? You are not going to find in any review, even by the manufacturer, where it has been used anywhere else other than accounting, maybe in purchasing, but that's it. Okay, so that's what speaks for the volume for a system, how it is being used inside the company. So here they are saying it is used for processing payroll. Great, payroll, again, these systems are going to have very strong payroll component because the industries that they are working in, they require very deep payroll functionality because they are very human-centric organization. If you look at hospital healthcare, so they need very deep payroll, they need payables, they need invoicing, receivables, and reconciliation or bank statements. Now, the W2 printing is what she's talking about. Here they are saying employee management is made very simple with all the information you can store in GP. Again, talking about employee. Then she's talking about AP clerk related to AP. Here they are saying very well suited for a small company that needs all-in-one software. Even though she's saying all-in-one software, that all is not all. Okay, we are able to use it for payroll, HR, benefits tracking, payables, receivables. That is barely accounting, guys. Okay, so that is not all. They are using only for accounting. Now let's look at the second review. Here, this is the second one. So here, this is coming from the accounting. We have 51 to 200 employees, which could be great. It's a much larger company. And a lot of, ERP vendors might claim that, my solution has been installed in a company that has 200 employees. Now let's look at the reviews, how it is being used. So if you're using it only for the accounting, that's not the real use of the ERP system. Okay, if you're going to have very deep operation needs, you can't compare your need with this company, even though it could be larger, but they are really using it for accounting. So here they are saying we use Microsoft Dynamics GP for accounts payable, receivable, accounting, reporting. And typically accounting is going to be easier than when you get into the real supply chain planning, manufacturing scenarios. That's where the real complexity is overall from the implementation perspective. Accounting is typically going to be the easiest. They can figure things out. You don't really have as much efficiency gains in the accounting department in general, and typically finance people are really good at sort of making them productive, I guess. So you are never going to, accounting is always going to be slightly easier just because that's the foundation of the ERP system. Now, let's look at some more reviews. Here, this is the manufacturing company.
And Sam, I was just going to add on that on accounting. Accounting processes are also tend to be well defined. They're GAAP processes. They're processes that are pretty standard and defined. Some of those other things, the business process definition is a big part of the lift, right?
Exactly. And, typically the people who have been doing accounting for a while, they sort of understand, how to optimize themselves as how I'm going to define. They know their way around. And obviously there are going to be a million ways to do the accounting, but then you need to be compliant with the guidelines as well. But as such, again, in the finance department, unless you are a very big company, it's very, very, very hard to find efficiencies. That's why accountants, who are slightly more strategic, they tend to focus more on the inventory sales because there is only so much you can do from the accounting perspective. So here, this is the manufacturing company. And I was really excited to review this. I'm like, okay, when I look at the screen, GP had everything. Okay, so this should work for any company, right? Any manufacturing company. So I'm looking at, okay, what is my manufacturing company doing? Okay, this is true for your Business Central product as well, which is a very distribution-centric product. So here they are saying Dynamics GP is the ERP MRP solution for a client with over 100 employees. Now, when you are going to read that line, you are going to say, okay, the Dynamics GP is working for a manufacturing company that has 100 employees. What more can you expect from a small system? Now, let's look at the other details. So here they are saying they have 25 GP users. We use the manufacturing module in addition to the sales, inventory, and back office functions. It is the accounting program for the whole company. There is a conflict right there. Okay, they are saying, first they are saying, it's for everything, but then he's saying it's the accounting program. And then as a manufacturer, it is responsible for bill of materials, logistics, planning, ordering, and general ledger. Now, even though it is saying bill of materials, logistics, I don't think they are doing the supply chain planning. I would say 100 person company would probably have decent supply chain workflow. They might have multiple warehouses where they might be doing a lot of transfers depending upon what kind of product they are selling. But it should be much harder lift to be able to do that in GP. So here, let's look at the pros and cons now.
The logistics might be just like an interface to UPS or something like that.
That's a possibility, right? Andy.
That's so you know how it is, right? It's amazing how one word can be interpreted 1,000 ways in ERP.
Exactly. So here, let's look at the pros. So pros, he's saying Great Plains started as the back office accounting. That's our interpretation as well. So he's right that, it started as the back office accounting. Now, some of the other things, communication from Microsoft about future of GP as they continue to promote Business Central and Dynamics 365, confusion and concern among users and partners about how long GP will get first level support and development. And that's a fair concern, guys. Okay. Obviously, Microsoft is trying to push. They are trying their best to move you in the right direction, to be honest. But if you are not willing to be moved, then, God can help you. That's all I can say right now.
Sam, this review is 3 years old or almost 3 years old. Do you think that there has been any evolution to the GP product since then that may alleviate some of these?
They are doing a little bit. So what they are doing is they are doing the fixes. They are doing the regulatory support. Obviously, they don't want any customers to be in legal trouble because of non-compliance that Microsoft cannot afford to have negative, PR in the market. That's why they have to comply from the regulatory perspective. So they are going to be doing all of the regulatory fixes. They are going to be doing all the tax fixes. They are going to be doing the bare minimum product fixes. That is not going to stop people from filing their taxes, doing their payroll. So they are doing all of that. But obviously, the development is not going to be as aggressive as some of the other cloud native systems. Okay, so the web client. So now, Dave, pay attention to this comment. I think this is where you are. So this is coming from the user. So he's saying the web client flat out sucks. You will need RDS or Citrix to support remote users. If you stick with desktop client, it enormously increases your workload as every update requires you update every client. RDS is the way to go, just to simply the update procedure, but RDS is an additional licensing. Okay, so there is pricing implication here. I don't know how the web client is rendered, but typically you are going to require some sort of Citrix. So as I said, it's almost like a display, the way Citrix technology works, right? So they are simply trying to sort of broadcast that, and that's what you are sort of using. Citrix technology itself has improved significantly. That's why you sort of don't feel the difference. But as such, from the pricing perspective, there is no shortcut. So you have to pay for the additional license, and then you are also going to see performance issues.
Yeah, I worked in a system that was it was very similar in infrastructure, and there were some performance issues directly tied to the RDS. So I now kind of see how that ties together. So thank you.
But in some cases, you might not require RDS because there are ways to do lifting and shifting, and people are becoming really smart because obviously buyers are becoming really smart. They can figure these things out. So now they need to find other ways of selling that.
Yeah. So yeah, the system it was an EFI system. It was an older system. So, but yeah, different implementation.
Yeah. So here, the other review here, they are saying you also have to understand that GP started life as Great Plains, designed for accountants. The other modules were added on after Microsoft bought Great Plains. Modules like manufacturing are red-headed stepchildren with much smaller support ecosystems. Okay, so he's being very clear there that it's not really designed for the manufacturing, it's really the stepchild. So if you are starting fresh, you may want to look at something built for the mobile world, and that's where the other differentiation is. When you are going to look at the Salesforce experience on mobile, that's your cloud native experience. Okay, so if you use Salesforce and if you're going to use any other thing, and most of the ERP system, they are probably going to have the browser-based experience. They are not going to have a real app. Okay, that's where you can find out whether that is a legacy system or it is going to be a cloud native system. That's a real differentiation. Most the older ones, I mean, now they are getting smarter in that too. They are trying to create a separate app. Okay, that's not going to have the same look and feel as your product. It's going to be a completely separate app that is going to go through your API. So your underlying code is still very legacy, but they are simply trying to create an app on top of that. So it's very hard to find from there as well. So good luck with that. I mean, companies are becoming really smart. So here they are saying it. If I was starting today, I would be hard pressed to justify jumping into GP in a world where Salesforce ties in with so many programs. GP has MRP, but it is limited. So this is where they are talking about the limitation of MRP. So it's hard to justify a manufacturer starting with GP today, which is right as well. This is really a distribution system. So if you are in those industries, then GP may work fine. But I have to agree with this guy. Why would you start on GP today? Okay, so some more reviews. So here they are saying this is in 2019. GP is good until it is no longer supported. Obviously, sometimes when salespeople are going to come to you, you are going to feel threatened that they are trying to push a new software because they are trying to make money. GP was far cheaper. NAV is going to be far more expensive. So why you are moving? But sometimes salespeople are good as well because they are trying to help you in a way. So you probably should be moving there. So here, again, this is a hospital and healthcare company. Now, guys, 500 to 1,000 employees, okay, in this company. That's a big deal. But if you are using only for accounting, you can use an ERP system that could be a desktop app for that large organization. The real challenge is going to be when you are going to increase the thickness of the transaction. And typically the thickness of the transaction is going to increase when the transaction goes from your pre-sales process to sales, to operations, to fulfillment, to warehouse, then to your accounting. That's where the real test is of the system. If you are doing 4 functions in the accounting, most systems can do that. But your real efficiencies are going to be in your operations. That's going to be in your planning. Accounting, you don't make money in accounting. Nobody made money in accounting unless you are an accountant and trying to charge somebody else. That's a different case. So here, Microsoft GP is used for all accounting and finance, bookkeeping and processing. Only finance uses GP, but the other departments use another medical billing software. And that is their operational system. Okay, so they are using something else to do their billing, invoicing, the customer handling, whatever they are trying to do. And then finally, all the GLs are going to come to the GP. So they are using it as the accounting system. You can run your business on QuickBooks, even if you're going to be 100 million, $500 million. Because if you're doing simply accounting, you can probably do that. But when you are going to be extending your transaction, that's where the real test of the ERP system is going to be. Does not always communicate with other valuable programs. Obviously, that is going to be a challenge. The program can glitch and will sometimes freeze from time to time. Again, the system is small, so obviously you are going to face those challenges when you are trying to kill it with the workload it is not designed for. Here, this review is coming from the manufacturing company as well. Here they have roughly 200 to 500 employees. And let's see if they are using it for the manufacturing. He's saying Dynamics GP is being used across our organization. We are using the system for accounting and inventory. Typically, distribution systems are going to be very strong in the inventory processes, guys. They are not going to be as strong with the MRP in the manufacturing processes, but they will have very deep inventory functionality because most distributors require far deeper inventory functionality than most manufacturers. Their needs are going to be different, but overall, the inventory functionality, the S&OP planning functionality is probably going to be far richer overall in the distribution systems. So here they are saying we are using the system for accounting and inventory, track and manage inventory, transaction management, quotes, orders, invoices, integration with other systems. Now let's look at some of the other comments. It is very limited with services such as rental management. Now, bigger ERP systems are probably going to have that process, even some of the smaller to mid-market, ERP system. But this is where the real test is, whether you can support the rental business model as part of your ERP or not. Some larger ones, upper to mid-market ones may support that. The smaller ones are probably not going to have that. We are unable to track rental inventory and create rental contracts. But in general, the rental leasing is a very complex business process. So anybody who's in that industry, they are probably not going to find an ERP system that is going to be mainstream. So they need to go for something like GP, because anyways, they're the only thing they can find from the ERP perspective is probably going to be the accounting. They have to have either the homegrown system or another system that is designed for their industry. So if you are in those industries, then it's a different case. But if you are a mainstream ERP industry, then you should be finding something that is already tested and proven in the market. So I will just go with the last slide, and then we can take some short comments. So here, this is also the real estate company. Real estate is a great example, guys. I call that as very non-ERP industry. You're not going to find much overall from the ERP perspective in that industry. So most companies, what they do is they are probably going to have Salesforce. They are going to have an accounting system, and then they are trying to manage all of their processes somehow, either custom built or they are trying to get some sort of real estate system. That's how they manage. But here they are doing it for sales, production, profit, loss, accounting statements, and for inventory control of science and other needed materials. Real estate companies are going to have a little bit of your inventory processes, but the inventory processes are not going to be as strong as your distribution retail organization, because that's their bread and butter. It is used across the whole organization, but uses are managed by individual department. Pros and cons: inventory and supply chain management, project analytics, and sales management. So here this person is saying it is well suited for small to medium sized sales and supply forces. I can't see larger companies using this, but perhaps I'm mistaken. He's actually right, that the larger companies are probably going to struggle. Here, this is also the retail company. Now, in this case, we have 200 to 500, and we'll see if this is being used by the retail company at least. So here they are saying Dynamics GP as a supplemental general ledger software to coincide with our POS software, Horizon Retail Solution. And this is going to be, have very thick POS functionality. It's going to be similar to your Bright Pearl. That's what a lot of retail companies do, is they are going to simply utilize either the POS system or the e-commerce system that is going to have far thicker, front end processes. But then it's not going to be a real ERP. You are still going to struggle with the real ERP scenario. But this could be okay for a very small company. If they are simply trying to buy a POS that is really rich, it might have a lot of inventory functionality. And then you have the accounting system that is simply doing the accounting for you. But the operations is completely missing. So we had a nightly feed sent from Horizon into Dynamics GP to track our accounting in our general ledger. Currently, we are still paying license fee to have access to historical GL detail. So this is, they did something, they moved from GP. So you have to pay for the historical license because you want to keep that license. And then they are saying as a Microsoft product, it's integrated closely with Excel. Guys, this is a very important point. A lot of people feel that Microsoft is going to have the best integration for Excel. That's not true at all. A lot of other systems in the market, they have far superior integration with Excel. Microsoft typically struggles. In fact, NEF is not the product that is most integrated with Excel. You are not going to find a very intuitive button on Excel, and sometimes you might require an add-on. So just because Microsoft is saying, Microsoft products integrates very well in the Microsoft ecosystem, that's not true at all. There are systems in the market that can do far better integration with Microsoft products. So it integrates closely with Excel. Every report can be easily exported to Excel. But guys, pay attention to the term report. In a lot of different ERP systems, you can literally dump your screen in a spreadsheet if you want to do that. Here, he is saying report. Any system out there, any ERP system can do report to Excel. That's very easy to do. Okay, when you have the data in the report form, but dumping the whole screen in a spreadsheet is a different ballgame altogether. Not many ERP systems can do that. In fact, I think SAP struggles with that. So here, I recommend hiring a consultant to help with integration and ongoing services. It's not a standalone product. So that's it for the presentation, guys. So now we can take some short comments.
This was a good session, Sam. I think, as with most of these sessions, the devil is in the details. And one of the things I picked up on what you said early on, which I think is a great point to reiterate. But often as you're looking through these things, and everybody knows how a demo typically rolls, but the point that you made early on was looking at some of the terminology utilized and deployed throughout the solution, and keying in to note, to recognize, is this kind of, my industry terminology, or is this something that, I don't necessarily understand? And I think that's it's kind of something minor, but I think it could turn into a major issue when you are just doing the kind of checklist approach, the typical, ERP discovery. That could be another tool in the toolbox to kind of lend a good filter of, is this a product built for what I'm trying to do with it? Does it match up to my business processes? And is this going to be a viable product for me into the future? So
just one quick comment there. So just one thing, make sure that your business processes that you are trying to compare your product with are in line and in order. Because if you are trying to compare the broken business processes with the system, good luck with that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks for adding that.
Having 40,000 customers and who knows how many users that is, there's going to be a market for the product for a long time yet. People leave, they know Great Plains, they're used to it. They go to a new place. There is going to be a market. It's just that it's going to be a declining market.
I agree. Phil?
Yeah, I would say it's this one's interesting. I think several of these will be on how these companies are handling their sunsetting products. And, they renamed NAV to Business Central, and they appear to be investing that, and they're advertising that Great Plains is going to be legacy and not be invested in. And so at least they're transparent. I thought that was a really great point. But yeah, I also it's really interesting how they're kind of hiding that it's not really native cloud. They're kind of hiding that there's other things going on. And I just wanted to add on the BI that just even if they include that in the license, the business intelligence doesn't stand itself up. There is still real work to be done, whether it's SI work or your own work to be done in order to get something decent out of a BI process, even if the licensing is cheap or almost free.
And that's why, Phil, we saw in case of Apicor that they are going to be building a lot of pre-integrated, pre-built BI dashboards that you can customize easily. So obviously,
role-based probably, right?
Sorry, what's it?
Role-based probably.
Role-based as well. Power BI is not as sophisticated BI platform in general. Obviously there are far richer platforms out there in the market. And the only reason why Microsoft is able to throw that for free is because it's a baby product. They would not make as much money anyways.
A lot of people like it though.
They do, just because it's simpler.
Yeah,
it gets talked about.
It does.
It's the QuickBooks product, guys. Everybody loves QuickBooks. Okay, or they hate.
Good session today, Sam. Very
session like always. You betcha.
Yeah.
Any other short comments, guys, before I wrap? All right, guys. So if you are on Microsoft GP, on March 15, 2022, you probably need to plan a little bit because you need to find out how the software world works. The product is not going to go anywhere.
Or 2028.
2028, we can talk about this issue in 2028 as well. There is a chance that they might extend the deadline.
Maybe too late.
There might be a chance that they might extend the deadline. But why would you stay on a dying product? It doesn't make any sense unless Microsoft comes out clean that they are going to position it as their cloud native product, which they are not doing at this point of time. If they do that, then it would make sense. But for now, they are not doing that. So if you are on GP, or worse yet, if you are buying GP, please do not. Okay, don't listen to your words. Don't buy GP. Okay, in 2022, nobody should be buying GP. You can maintain if you are already on GP, you can stay on that, but you should not buy new GP licenses in 2022. On that note, that's it for today, guys. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one vendor or the solution. We analyze it thoroughly, and then we pick a bunch of stories for the week that we cover related to ERP and digital transformation. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thanks everybody for your time and insights today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sam.